Well, good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Tuesday, April the 15th. Let me see if I can, there, that's a little better. Day 1147 of Russia's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the news that we are waking up to. Now, last two nights, together, the Russians have sent as many drones as they usually send in one night. Last night, it was only 52 drones. Nearly 90% interception rate, 26 shot down, another 19 taken out with active countermeasures or electronic warfare of some kind. There was an air alarm last night in Kyiv before the live, but I am unaware of any drones impacting Kyiv. The damage seems to have been mostly in the east, although there are no deaths reported this morning, thank God. Now, I hope that wasn't too jarring for everybody. This morning I wanted to take a minute and, 2 years here in Kyiv, 3 years watching this war unfold and educating myself about the history of Ukraine, the history of Russia, how we got here. The really stunning, and it shouldn't have been stunning. It's normal, right? For most of my life, the world has been at war someplace, and the daily realities of it did not affect me. And so it was striking to me that I could leave Ukraine last week and be in a place where nobody talks about the war. The war is not on TV. It's not on any of the screens that I was exposed to. It just went away. And it is so easy to not pay attention to this conflict. In fact, it is much easier to not pay attention to this conflict than it is to pay attention to it, because it's hard to pay attention to. The injustice, the absolute abysmal genocidal lunacy of the entire thing, the torture, rape of Ukrainians, the murder of Ukrainians every day by these Russian bastards. It is easy to turn away from that. And after 3 years of really being focused every day on this war, it was good for me to take 3 days off and not pay attention to it at all. It was a good break. But what I really wanted to say to all of you who are sitting comfortably in the West, right? 67% of the people that watch this channel are in the United States. The vast majority of the remaining 33% are in Western Europe. To the best of my knowledge, I don't even have any Ukrainian Patreon supporters, though I might be wrong about that. What I wanted to say to all of you was kudos. I wanted to say congratulations. In my opinion, you're paying attention to the most important geopolitical happening of our lives. And it is so easy to turn away from it. That all of you who are so actively engaged, both in politics at home and in the politics of Ukraine, I salute you, because it is so easy to turn away. We can't afford to take our eye off this ball, and we can't afford to let a criminal in the White House, because that's what he is. He is a convicted felon who sees the American government and our entire economic system as nothing but a grift to line his own pockets. And we got some startling information last week. I just discovered it today. But last Friday, Reuters reported that part of the new mineral deal that Trump wants executed, he wants Ukraine to give ownership of the gas pipeline from Russia to the United States. The gas pipeline that was shut off by Ukraine, that is so important for keeping billions of dollars in gas revenues out of the aggressor state's pockets so that they can fund this genocidal lunacy in Ukraine. He wants control of it so he can turn those taps back on. Pure evil. Pure evil. And my fellow Americans, I don't know what we are going to do about it, because nobody seems willing to stand up to this insanity, including the Supreme Court, who Trump now stands in open defiance of, creating a constitutional crisis of the worst sort for America. So for everybody who supports this channel, and for everybody whose eye is on the ball in this conflict, I really do think, I mean, first of all, you have my deep gratitude, because I couldn't do this without you. But I do think that it's important to remember it's easy to ignore it. You could ignore it, and you don't. And I think you're doing the right thing. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, now, last night, this is Kursk region. According to Russian authorities, they shot down 115 drones outside of Kursk. So Kursk is burning today. And now this is a residential high-rise, right? I acknowledge that. I don't believe it was the target of the Ukrainian drone attacks. I think probably a drone was shot down and hit this building. The Ukrainians, in my experience, do not target civilians. Their treatment of civilians, as testified to by many civilians in Kursk, is respectful, lawful, and what you would expect of any modern military. Now, so Ukraine is not taking this past week's attacks lying down. They're giving it back to the Russians. And in this case, it was in Kursk. Now, you can say, well, what were the military targets? In all likelihood, Kursk, 1/3 of all drones fired at the territory of Ukraine originate in Kursk. So there are drone warehouses there. There are drone launching sites there. And not to mention, of course, tons of military who have just pushed the Ukrainians back from Sudza toward the Ukrainian border, though the Ukrainians are still maintaining a foothold in Kursk. We got some interesting stuff from the Chinese. First, we'll hear from them, and then I'll give you some additional quotes that are not included in this video. So they were asked about, do they have concerns returning home? And the concern that they have is that they will be prosecuted. Now, for crimes in Ukraine. Not that these guys appear to be responsible for any war crimes, nor, to the best of my knowledge, have they been indicted for any war crimes. But just the act of going and fighting for a foreign power may be considered unlawful to the Chinese. And so they have concerns about returning home. Surrendering to the enemy is certainly unlawful for the Russians. We just saw the first Russian POW, right, captured in Ukraine, returned to Russia, sentenced to 15 years for surrendering to the enemy. Is it any wonder why the Russians don't surrender? Right? They fight until there's no fight left. Now, these guys talked a little bit about that, about Did you try to escape when you found out it was bad? What happened? So running away is not possible because the moment you join the training camp, every time you go to the bathroom, even in the middle of the night, there will be a soldier following you around with a loaded gun. Then during training, your commander will always keep an eye on you. There is no way you can escape. Plus, Russian sentries are everywhere. You cannot run from them. And as we understand it, this is the same for Storm Z prisoners. It's the same for most of the conscripts and crypto mobilized troops. They are under constant guard and they face barrier troops should they attempt to retreat. This makes escape and of course they don't get bullets for their guns until they get dropped off at the front line. That's another thing, if they get bullets at all. In Rostov, there was once an incident where a foreigner committed suicide in the middle of the night. The actual reason specifically, we don't know. So he's talking about morale among the troops and one of the foreign conscripts that committed suicide while in training with them. All Russia fed us are lies. Now, it's important to note these guys also talked about the food. He said at one point they worked for nearly 48 hours straight until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on the second day before they were given a pinch of uncooked rice. Now, I don't know what you're supposed to, I guess you're supposed to start a fire and cook that yourself. But that is what they claim. They made the claim that they were not adequately provided food, fuel, or resources, or even water. The training camp, they said, had no power and no water. So they went on to say, all Russia fed us are lies. They're fake. Russia isn't as strong as they claim, and Ukraine isn't as backward as they say. When the moment of joining the war comes, when one starts exchanging fire, I discover that everything is a lie. I wish you to remember by all means not to join any war, especially this war that is irrelevant to us, said this mercenary to his fellow Chinese citizens. A war that is irrelevant to us. I cannot imagine a war that is more relevant to me than the war between our greatest enemy, autocracy, in the person of Vladimir Putin, as projected from the Kremlin, against an emergent democracy fighting for its own liberty and freedom, and the wholesale sellout of that ally by a corrupt administration in the person of Donald Trump. It is a crime and a sin. Now, as far as the Chinese response to these captured guys, it ranges anywhere from skepticism to support. On China's Guangxi region, a user from China's Guangxi region asked beneath a video from a news report from Hong Kong's state TVB television channel, are they Chinese just because they speak Mandarin Chinese? Right? He doesn't even believe they're Chinese. He thinks it's all a scam by the Ukrainians to smear the Chinese. In response to the claim that Zelensky's government made that there are as many as 155 Chinese nationals fighting as mercenaries for Russia, Beijing did not refute it, but said that the comments were irresponsible and left it at that. Now, I did make a mistake. These guys did have their passports on them. Their passports were not seized, as we have heard so often from others. Very much like the North Koreans, who were still in possession of their North Korean passports as well as their Russian passports. The Chinese seem to have had their original documents with them. That may indicate that these guys knew that they were going to fight, right? That it wasn't like the Indians and the Nepalese who were told that they were just going to guard locations in Moscow and then had their passports taken and sent to the front. It appears that these guys came into the country knowing that they were going to Ukraine to fight as mercenaries. The Chinese are not happy. Many of the Chinese are not happy with them. Many recommended their immediate execution upon return to China. Personal behavior, just shoot him. Firing squads were recommended by other commentators. Others question the sanity of these people leaving China. Can you give up everything for money? You have to live to spend it, one user commented. Even to make a living, we must not lose our sense of right and wrong. This is the bottom line of being human, a user from China's Inner Mongolia commented. So there appear to be as many opinions about these guys as there are Chinese themselves. There were lots of comments supporting Russia and supporting China's friend Russia, long historical ties with Russia. Going to fight for Russia is seen as not a bad thing by many of the Chinese commentators on social media. But there were just as many saying that they should never have gone. It doesn't concern us, yada, yada. Friedrich Merz, the soon-to-be new chancellor of Germany, has announced that he will make his first foreign visit following his ascension to the chancellorship to Ukraine, underscoring the importance of the relationship between Germany and Ukraine and the importance of this fight to Europe. And finally today, I saw this and I thought this is the perfect summary. This encapsulates the current situation. The guy in the White House is a tool of the Kremlin. Everything he does benefits himself and his Kremlin handlers. And that's all he's worried about, guys. That is all he is worried about. Okay, that's it for this morning. I will see everybody in tonight's live. Thanks so much. Take care.